A receptionist befriends a quiet janitor, then discovers he's secretly her new CEO. It was 6:42 a.m. when I clocked into the lobby of Weston and Crane Holdings. The sun hadn't even cracked the horizon, but I was already behind on emails. Phones hadn't started ringing yet, and the floor was quiet enough to hear my own thoughts, until the janitor's cart squeaked past reception again. He never said much. Every morning, just as I brewed the front desk coffee, he'd shuffle by, always in the same dark navy uniform, shoulders slightly hunched, silver-streaked hair tucked under his cap. No name badge. Just that same quiet nod. "Good morning," I offered like always. His eyes met mine briefly. "Morning." That was the most I'd ever gotten out of him. The other girls on the floor barely acknowledged him. Too focused on their stilettos and oat milk lattes to notice the man changing trash bins and polishing glass doors. But I noticed. One day the elevator broke. We were down to one working lift and the entire senior staff was complaining. I glanced toward the janitor, who was gently replacing a hallway light bulb. "You'd think for a Fortune 500 building we could keep an elevator running," I joked. He cracked the faintest smile. "That'd be nice." I laughed softly and he nodded again before returning to his work. That was the first real moment. The next morning there was a small folded napkin on my desk. Inside it, a perfectly wrapped blueberry muffin from the cafe downstairs. No note, just the pastry. I blinked and glanced down the hall. He was polishing the brass handles again. I lifted the muffin slightly in question. He just tipped his cap. From then on we spoke more. His name, I learned, was Henry. He liked crossword puzzles. He drank black coffee. He had a gentle, unhurried way of speaking that made you feel like time slowed when he listened. "Been working here long?" I asked one afternoon. He paused, wiping down the conference room glass. "On and off. Years." "Years?" That surprised me. I'd only been at Weston and Crane for 6 months. I'd never seen him listed in payroll, never passed him in HR orientation. "I don't think I've ever seen your name on any of the staff emails." Henry smiled slightly. "That's the point. I should have found that strange. But I didn't. Not then." One Thursday I stayed late. Quarter-end reporting had blown up, and every executive in the building seemed to think the front desk was their personal assistant hotline. By 7:30 p.m. I was the last to leave. Or so I thought. As I packed up, I heard the soft hum of a vacuum. Down the corridor Henry was still working. I almost left him be, but something made me stop. "You always stay this late?" I called gently. He turned. "Only when there's something worth cleaning." I grinned. The execs left the third floor looking like a tornado hit it. He chuckled. "Figures." I leaned against the desk, crossing my arms. "So what's your story, Henry? You show up before sunrise, leave long after sunset, and somehow still move like you've got no deadlines chasing you." He looked at me for a long moment, expression unreadable. Then he said, "Sometimes, it's not about deadlines. It's about watching how people behave when they think no one's watching." I blinked. "That's kind of deep for a janitor." He smiled. "You'd be surprised." The lights flickered. I glanced up. Oh great, the fuse again. Henry calmly walked to the breaker closet and without even checking reset the system. Lights restored. "How did you know which one to flip?" I asked. "I've seen the blueprint," he said casually. Before I could reply, a loud ding rang from the elevator. The CEO's personal assistant, a terrifying woman named Denise, stormed out holding a phone. She stopped dead when she saw Henry. "Oh," she sneered. "It's just you." Henry gave her a polite nod. Denise turned to me. "Did you see anyone important come through here? Mr. Thatcher's supposed to arrive any day now, new owner. No one's seen his face. Apparently he wants to see how the company really runs." I raised a brow. "Like, in disguise?" Denise rolled her eyes. "He's eccentric. But rich. So everyone's pretending it makes sense." She turned sharply. "You clean up the exec lounge before tomorrow." Henry nodded slowly. She didn't even wait for a response before vanishing down the hallway. I turned to Henry. "They really don't treat you like part of the team, huh?" He smiled faintly. "They don't know who I am." I opened my mouth to ask what that meant, but he was already walking away. The next Monday Weston and Crane was buzzing like a shaken soda can. Whispers flew through the hallways. "He's here." Nucio just arrived. No one's ever seen him in person. At exactly 9 a.m., all floor-level employees were summoned to the executive conference room. The massive glass doors were polished to a blinding shine. Executives fidgeted. Denise had traded her usual scowl for an overcompensating smile. I stood awkwardly near the back, still just a receptionist. And then the doors opened. The room quieted as a man stepped forward. No suit. No briefcase. Just dark slacks, a navy shirt and familiar silver-streaked hair under a clean-cut haircut. My heart slammed against my ribs. It was Henry. Cleaned up. Confident. Composed. He walked to the center of the room, set down a tablet and turned to face the crowd. Good morning. I'm Henry Thatcher, the new CEO of Weston and Crane Holdings. The silence was deafening. Denise's face turned the color of wet chalk. Someone coughed. Others blinked in disbelief. He continued calmly. Some of you know me as the janitor. That's because I've spent the last 3 months working under a false identity, observing the culture, understanding the people. He paused, letting the words sink in. I've seen kindness, and I've seen arrogance. I've seen initiative and entitlement. But today I want to start fresh. Real leadership starts from the ground up. He glanced around the room, then his gaze landed on me. I froze. This company has potential, he said slowly. But only if we reward the right people. He turned toward the senior management table. Effective immediately will be restructuring. Promotions will be based on merit, not politics. Gasps rippled. I felt my knees wobble. Henry, no, Mr. Thatcher, looked straight at me again and smiled. And in that moment I knew my life was about to change. The next morning at the front desk, Kira couldn't stop thinking about what Mr. Garrison had said. You remind me of someone I once trusted with everything. It kept echoing in her head like a riddle begging to be solved. She tried to push it aside. She had more pressing issues. There were rumors swirling about layoffs. The board was planning a restructuring after the new CEO officially took over in 2 weeks. Everyone was on edge. But somewhere between organizing client folders and redirecting calls, Kira glanced up and saw Mr. Garrison again. This time not with his mop but sitting alone in the break room. Not cleaning. Just thinking. Her curiosity got the better of her. On her lunch break she walked in with 2 cups of vending machine coffee and handed one to him. Figured you might want a break from mopping the universe, she joked softly. He smiled. Thank you, Miss Kira. How do you know my name? She asked, more out of habit than suspicion. Mr. Garrison took a slow sip then said, I read it on the staff board weeks ago. I like to learn names. You'd be surprised how few people do that anymore. True, Kira nodded. Most people don't even ask how you are. He looked at her for a long moment. And yet, you did. That afternoon Kira got called into HR. Her stomach twisted. She thought it was about the restructuring. Instead she found herself face to face with 3 well-dressed board members. One of them slid a file across the table. Ms. Rowan, we're vetting internal candidates for something unusual, one of them said. The new CEO requested a recommendation list. Your name came up. Kira's eyebrows furrowed. Me? Why? Another board member answered. Because apparently the janitor you've been eating lunch with isn't just a janitor. Her pulse skyrocketed. They leaned in. He's Alexander Garrison, the billionaire who just bought this company. Kira sat frozen in the HR chair. Her throat dried up. He's what? She finally croaked. The woman nodded. Founder of Garrison Holdings. Known for disguising himself before making major leadership decisions. It's how he weeds out superficial executives and finds character. You mean, all this time? Kira's voice trailed off, mind spinning back to every conversation, every smile, every kindness. He asked us not to inform staff during his observation period. But this morning he gave us this. She slid a handwritten letter across the table. It was brief and simple. Kira Rowan has integrity, empathy, and the kind of leadership this company desperately needs. If she's willing, I'd like to start grooming her for corporate communications and culture development. Effective immediately. Hey. Kira's world tilted. When she left HR she didn't go back to her desk. She went straight to the janitor's closet. She knocked once. No answer. But as she turned the knob, it opened. Inside was a simple room, almost empty. Just a single folded jumpsuit and a note. Meet me on the rooftop at sunset. Her heart thumped wildly as she climbed those stairs. The city was painted in pink and orange light when she found him standing there in a tailored black coat, looking out over the skyline. You lied, she said not coldly, but with a cracking voice. I didn't lie, he said gently. I just didn't reveal everything. I needed to know who still treated people with dignity when they thought no one important was watching. She was quiet for a long moment. Why me? Alexander Garrison turned to her. Because you treated a janitor with the same respect most reserve for COs. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. There's a position I've created. One built on compassion. It's yours if you'll take it. Kira took the folder in silence, her fingers trembling. Inside was a full offer, salary, title, and a note written in Mr. Garrison's distinct scrawl. Chief People and Purpose Officer. Because this company needs more people like you guiding its heart. She looked up, unsure what to feel. I've never run anything before. Alexander smiled. Good. That means you'll ask the right questions instead of thinking you already know the answers. I'm not ready. You are, he said firmly. You just need someone to remind you. That night she didn't sleep. She thought about the job, the risk, the responsibility. But most of all, she thought about that janitor's closet. The silence. The simplicity. The humility behind it all. The next morning she walked into the office not with hesitation, but with fire in her step. She didn't sit at her reception desk. Instead she rode the elevator to the top floor, walked into Mr. Garrison's new office, and placed her signed contract on his desk. I'm in. He grinned. Good. Now let's shake things up. And they did. What followed in the weeks ahead was a transformation that no one in the company had expected. Kira led initiatives to eliminate the toxic culture that had infected the lower ranks for years. She restructured training programs, implemented listening sessions, and even created a feedback loop between janitorial staff and executives. Every employee was seen. Every voice was heard. And yet, as the company began to glow with new energy, whispers started spreading again, not malicious ones but curious ones. Why did the CO spend so much time in the break room? Why did he often walk the halls with Kira at lunch? Why did they both look at each other like there were still chapters waiting to be written? Because there were. And one letter, still unopened, lay hidden in Kira's top drawer. A letter he had given her on that very rooftop the day she said yes. He had told her not to read it until she was ready. But what was inside would change everything.